Yes, we will talk soon.
All right. Good morning, good
Good.
afternoon, good evening, depending on when and where you are watching this Facebook Live. Happy Saturday, because we're doing this on a Saturday morning. And I'm happy to be here again to discuss or have conversations that help our patients live long and well. Because at Livingspring Family Medical Center, we believe in helping our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. So today's live, we're going to be talking about the phrase or the topic, doc, I worry a lot. And no, I don't have anxiety. Please help me. Of course, we're having talks with a psychiatrist today. I'm happy to have back for the second time Dr. Bolanle Akinronbi. Woohoo!
Ooh.
Thank you so much for coming back, Doc. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for inviting me back. Great to be here always.
Awesome, awesome. For those who are watching live, please hashtag live, and those who are watching replay, hashtag replay. So, Doc, please kindly introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure, thank you. My name is I'm Dr. Bolanle Akinronbi. I'm a psychiatrist. That's, I guess, a physician who specializes in mental health care, mind, body. That's
Awesome,
what I do.
awesome. Now I know you talked about it the last time you were here, but we want to get a refresher. So, why do you do what you do? What got you into psychiatry?
So I want to say in a snapshot that psychiatry is the one place where I found human connection the most
Mhm.
useful and effective in helping people to make changes and live well. That would say a shorter version of what the
That's
journey.
deep. That's deep. That's deep. Human connection. Beautiful. I like what you do. I love what you do, and I'm thankful you do what you do because we definitely need that, especially in these days and times. So, our first question is this: what is worrying, and how is that connected to anxiety? Because worrying's natural. People worry, but
Yes.
what is worrying, and how does that tie to anxiety?
Anxiety. All right. So, worry actually is an expression of anxiety. I think that's where we want to begin, right? So, anxiety in and of itself is a normal human emotion. It's part of our alarm system. It's how our body warns us when there is danger, whether it's actually a real danger or perceived danger. Anxiety is how our body warns us about that. And the two ways that we experience anxiety, which is normal, is fear and
Mm,
worry. Those are the two expressions of anxiety. So I think maybe when people get concerned about anxiety, they worry about disordered anxiety, right?
okay.
Disordered anxiety is the one that we should worry about. But anxiety actually is good, is normal. We need it. It's like the alarm system for our body to warn us about danger.
Okay. So it's like a fight or flight, like a red flag type thing for us
It,
to kind of sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so I like to say, like, it's like the alarm system of a car. If you park your car and, somebody tries to open it, that's not you, you want your alarm systems to go off. Go
Okay.
off. If something dangerous, if you're standing in a forest and a lion, you see something in the shadows coming through, you want your alarm systems to go off. And if there's something happening in your life that threatens your safety, how you feed yourself, your housing, your shelter, you want
Mm,
your alarm systems to go off because that's what then propels you to do something about it. The thing that we do about it then is, what we call the fight, flight, freeze response or friend
mm,
response. Those are the decisions that come later. But anxiety in and of itself expresses worry or fear when there is actual trouble in the horizon is normal, a good thing, and we need it to stay alive and to be alive and to be well.
okay. All right. So when does it become an issue? You mentioned that. I want you to emphasize when does it
Okay.
become like, whoa, okay, this is beyond normal anxiety.
Okay. So anxiety becomes disordered or becomes an issue when either we start to fire alarms off when there's no actual danger, right?
Ah,
Okay, when we're firing with nothing really wrong, that's a problem. Or if we are firing all the time, we're hyper aroused, hyperactive, our warning systems through the amygdala, the emotional centers, start to fire off. So think about it as your car is sitting there, you have the alarms. Maybe the wind blew a little too hard, the alarm goes off. A cat crawled under the car, the alarm goes off. At that point, the alarm is no longer being helpful. It's becoming a nuisance. It's becoming distressful. That's when, that's when what we call disordered anxiety. And that's when we'll say that, anxiety is problematic, right? It's firing on and on and on and on for no clear threat.
Okay, it becomes too alarming, pun intended. I got you. I got you. Now, for someone who's watching, who's saying, well, okay, I see the difference. There's a level that's normal, and there's a level that affects, obviously, your functionality and is unnecessary. Um, are there things that can cause it? What would you say? What are the most common causes you see that cause
Okay.
anxiety?
So things that can cause anxiety. So I like to say that it's sort of like, so anything pretty much that threatens our safety or sense of safety or survival can trigger anxiety. However, some people are more prone for different reasons to the disordered anxiety. So like to the excessive firing off of our warning systems. One, I would say some people have a genetic, we know that some people have a genetic predisposition or genetic tendency
Mm-hmm.
to be vulnerable. So we call it like a vulnerability to overfiring of our warning systems, via the amygdala. Like some studies have shown that some people, even if just shown, like in a study where they show scary face to people, some people have a tendency to fire heavily, more frequently, more than others. So I would say those people have a vulnerability or a likelihood of being susceptible to having anxiety. Some people also who either from their childhood experiences have been exposed to unsafe conditions perpetually. Their neurocircuitry, their brain, their amygdala learns to fire a lot because they're growing up in unsafe conditions. So let's think about a child growing up in child abuse, a child
Mm-hmm.
growing up in a war zone, somebody developing in an area where they don't feel safe, someone developing around food scarcity, for example. um, they feel perpetually unsafe in such a way that their warning systems learns to feel unsafe. Those types of people also develop a vulnerability to later disordered anxiety because their alarm systems then fire off so much when it sees a threat in the future or perceives a threat in the future. It has a tendency to then overfire. A third group of people who may be predisposed to disordered anxiety might be people with depression. We know that the pathways in our brains for making connections for for depression and anxiety are very similar. There's a lot of overlap. So sometimes when we are depressed, people who are depressed, eventually the pathways will start to cross over in such a way that the warning systems might start to fire. And that's why we'll see a lot of times depression and anxiety co-occur. So if there are situations in a person's life that has them in a state of depression, anxiety can follow. Those people are predisposed as well. Another set of people who might develop disordered anxiety would be people who have sensitization or trained avoidance. So these are people who, so I would give an example to explain that. Say, let's say you see a dog. You see a dog when you're a child or even as an adult. And say you've your brain center, your memory centers like the hippocampus says, that thing, big dog. Oh, remember we saw a news article a few days ago where someone was bitten by a dog and it mauled them, and then it fires off the alarm systems. And in order to feel comfortable, you run away, right? Once you run away, you feel good, you feel calmer, the natural warning systems kind of calm down.
Right.
A person like that will then, if every time they encounter a dog, their alarm systems will fire a little harder. They start to train themselves to be fearful and become, I mean, they're not training themselves. They're not probably making this happen consciously. But what
Consciously,
happens is
subconscious.
they become sensitized and trained to run away from a dog. So every time they encounter a situation that looks like a dog, smells like a dog, or reminds them of a dog, their alarm systems would over fire, they've now sensitized themselves based on avoidance to get away from whatever that thing is that they've accepted as a threat, and now they've sensitized and become avoidant. So by avoiding a fearful, potentially fearful situation, we train our alarm systems that that thing is dangerous, and every time we encounter such a thing, it would fire an overdrive.
Okay.
Those people again will then be people who might be predisposed to having more disordered anxiety. So those are some general examples of, things that can predispose or cause a person to have a tendency towards disordered anxiety.
Awesome. Very, very useful information. And I love the examples you gave with it too. I've also seen a pattern where the if you grow up around someone who's anxious, let's say a parent whose natural response is always, oh my gosh, then you also, it's almost like a trained
Yeah, the
subconscious.
sensitization, right? You learn that everything is unsafe, and so you're now primed. Your warning systems is just primed to go off.
All right, all right. This is very, very useful. Now, I do encourage, of course, having conversations with your doctors one on one to come up with a, kind of question and answer to have to kind of find out what may be the trigger for you. I do know also that sometimes thyroid issues can present like this. So there are also medical conditions that could present or cause anxiety.
Absolutely.
Now, so someone who's watching this who said, okay, doc, I get it. Whatever the cause, there are things I cannot go back in time and change. What can I do to prevent it or to minimize the risk of flares of these disorganized anxiety? I don't know if these are two questions. Maybe we can say, how do I prevent it, and how do I do it? Let's
Address
start
it?
with how do I prevent it, doc? Can I prevent it? What do I do? Help.
There are ways that we can reduce our risk towards anxiety. You're right. Like there are things that we can't change, the genes, our childhood, we can't go back and change that. But in some way we can have corrective experiences through therapy. I'm a huge proponent, supporter, referrer of people to therapy, right? We can consider and reevaluate childhood experiences in therapy. So if you tend to find that you're someone who's prone towards anxiety or experiencing hyperactivation of anxiety signals in situations maybe that don't warrant that level of arousal, therapy is a good way to explore, like you were talking about a child who's raised by an anxious parent. They tend to become anxious because now they're sensitized to being alarmed that way. So therapy is one way. I would say also in terms of interventions that we can do that's accessible, the biggest bang for our buck, I want to say, is meditative practices. And there are different kinds of meditative practices. Meditative practices have benefits in many ways. By they can reduce cortisol level, they can help us modulate our autonomic systems, and these are all systems that are involved in disordered anxiety, and normal anxiety as well as disordered anxiety, right? So when we are have disordered anxiety, our cortisol levels are high, which predisposes us to strokes, other kind of cardiovascular diseases. High cortisol level does that, obesity as well. When our autonomic systems is constantly firing, which is what happens again in disordered anxiety, heart rates are up, blood pressure is up. So, but we know that meditative practices have the ability to help us regulate these systems if we practice them regularly. So what are meditative practices? So prayer is one, for people who have faith and spirituality, prayer is a good meditative practice. There are other kinds like yoga, tai chi, different, popular practices, so many of them that we can learn about even online to engage in. Meditative breathing or deep breathing exercises are very important ones. I can testify to this. I engage in a lot of deep breathing exercises, either just regular deep breathing, yoga, or even while exercising. Like the deep breathing that you do while you're exercising is a very, very good way to regulate your autonomic system. And if I've tried this, I've been hooked up to a machine and done deep breathing, and you can literally see your heart rate slow down. You can see your respiratory rate slow down. Like it's factual, it works. I want to say a pointer though with these practices. when you're in a panic or already anxious, is not a good time to start trying to do that. Because when people I say, when we encourage people to do deep breathing and they try it when they're in a panic, of course they start hyperventilating. It makes things worse, and they're like, well, that didn't work. The reason it doesn't work in that circumstance is because you're not practiced. If you're going to lean on a practice like that, you have to you have to develop expertise at doing it. You have to learn to do it well. So you need to like do a regular breathing practice to master it, so that if you need to call upon it in the context of an anxiety provoking
Mm-hmm.
situation, it comes naturally to you. You do it correctly. It's deep, it's expanding. It does, it works the way it's supposed to do, as opposed to like leading you into hyperventilation, which is what
Mm.
happens with people who never practice it and then suddenly try to reach out for it in the middle of a panic.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And for those who are watching, I don't want you to get discouraged. Habits can be learned. Meditation can be learned, can be practiced few seconds every day, or even multiple spurts of practicing breathing in deeply, inhaling deeply, and exhaling also deeply through your mouth throughout the day. And there are apps for it to teach you. Like there's so many tools that can help you. So don't get
YouTube is a
all
good source.
yeah. Because like when people hear meditation, sometimes like, oh my goodness, I have to be a master yogi or no. There are little
No.
things you could do to practice every day. So when you need it, you can pull that tool out. Wow. So it's possible
Yes.
to prevent
Guided
it.
relaxation is another one I wanted to drop in there, right? Which is something everyone and anyone can do, even to help you fall asleep at night. This is one I personally like. It's pretty straightforward, but you can Google it also on YouTube to
Wait, wait,
find out
wait,
how
wait,
to
wait,
do
wait,
it.
wait. It helps with sleep. Can we emphasize that little guided relaxation, please?
Guided relaxation, where you like decide, okay, I want to fall asleep. It's time for me to rest. You close your eyes. You make sure everything is quiet. If you like to have nice fragrance in your room, you make the room kind of conducive to sleeping. If you want to put on a sound machine, you can do that. And then usually you start either top to bottom or bottom to top. I like bottom to top. And then, I close my eyes, you visualize your toes. If notice any tension in there, you relax it. Maybe you're curling your toes as you're, noticing it. You relax it, you focus on it, you relax it, and then you work your way up to your heels, stretch it out, you relax. You're breathing as you're doing this, and you work your way up all the way to your head. If you, do that in a guided way, systematically, just concentrating on that, by the time you're all the way to your eyes, you're gonna like feel really relaxed and deep and sleepy, and you can roll off
Making
a
me
bit
fall
more
asleep.
easily.
You're
Yeah,
making
because when you're starting that, also you're signaling your brain, you're signaling
me
yourself it's time to rest. You're
mm,
putting your phone
mm.
away, everything is out, and you want to chill out. You can do this in a very systematic way. There are lots of like videos online and YouTube where you can learn how to do this. They're pretty simple, and I think everyone has access to do this on a regular basis to help soothe themselves. I will throw in two more things that all doctors talk about, but we all kind of underestimate. Sleep and regular exercise are two things that can help you reduce anxiety. Um, Good sleep routine, exercise. They're so good for so many things. We should all be doing that, working hard to make sure we're prioritizing those two things.
Awesome. I love it. So many gems dropped here. Good sleep and exercise. Sometimes when you're exhausted, yes, that's your body's way of saying, I need more rest. So I'm glad there's hope and it can be preventable. Now, I have a question, and I get this quite a bit when you're talking with patients. Well, what if there's something actually wrong that validates the reason for the anxiety? Someone has gone through something traumatic, maybe recently, and the world is shook, shaking, and it's like, doc, I have a reason to be anxious because this happened to me. What would you say to that person?
So I would say then that your alarm systems are working properly. If you see
Okay.
danger, you want your alarm systems to go off.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'll ignore the danger and something bad can happen. So if something has happened and it's causing your alarm systems to go off, it actually means you need to stop and assess what that thing is and address it. It can be something as obvious and stressful. I like to use the saber-toothed tiger in the forest. That's obvious. Everybody knows that's dangerous. So maybe you need to stop, figure out if you need to run away, or if you need to stay and fight it, get a weapon, get a shelter, play dead, freezing spot, whatever it is you need to do. In our modern day lives, our tigers are no longer the animals in the forest. Most of us do not live in the jungle anymore. But our events that cause us trouble are things that threaten our survival, right? What do we need for survival now? We need our food, we need our shelter. Our jobs give us access to those things. Our relationships, oh my God, and I forgot to talk about the things that can prevent anxiety, healthy relationships. If you're in a relationship that's stressful and traumatic and you're on edge all the time and you're anxious, well, listen to your body. Your body's saying, this is raising my cortisol levels. This is raising my heart rate. We need to do something about it, because the longer you keep your body in that state, the more problems will follow. So the things that threaten our survival in modern day, if those things, you can see them, they're tangible, and you're anxious, then it's time to address it. The solution to that anxiety will be addressing the issue. I guess is a simple way to say, depending if you're in a stressful job that does not serve your life in the way that you want it to be, and now you're perpetually anxious, it's time to think about it. Do I want to keep this job? Do I want to reduce my hours? Do I want to change? Either way, when you address the situation, your alarm signals will quiet down. Now, if you've addressed the thing and your alarm systems is still going off, maybe because they're now conditioned or sensitized to keep going off, medications can help. We know that, for example, when you're speaking with either your primary care doctor, your family physician, your psychiatrist, and you started on serotonergic based medications, especially in elderly, there's studies that show that cortisol levels are reduced. Autonomic system can be quieted down. So that's where medicines and things play in. But in terms of addressing anxiety, we really want to be looking globally. We don't want to say, well, I'm anxious, here's an SSRI, because that's not the full problem. If you have an actual life-threatening situation happening, if you're living in a traumatic situation, if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're not resting or sleeping, your job is stressing you out, all the SSRIs in the world are not going to fix that. And that's why we need to have a global way of looking at these problems when they come up. I'll be quiet so Dr. Tolu can.
No, that's very important. We got to treat the underlying issues too. And the truth is, we spend a good amount of time with people we work with, and so if that's a big trigger, then that needs to be addressed. Either something changes at the work, or you may need to consider changing, and so that could be difficult too. But addressing the underlying issue is key, not just throwing medications at the problem. So very good. Now, next question, and you touched on this already. Let's talk about the self-help tips for the day to day. Okay, you found out that you've been sensitized to, or you've grown the habit of your alarms overfiring as a way of life. You've seen it as an issue now because it's affecting your ability to enjoy the things that are there with you, because you're worried about something else going wrong. And that's the thing about the alarms. They distract you from the things that are actually going well in your life, so you're not able to enjoy them fully. 5 tips. Doc, please make them easy.
Okay.
Make them, when I say easy, meaning practical, like we can do this and cost effectively. So what would you say are 4 to 5 things for the day to day for someone to practice?
I feel like we hit that already, but I'm going to go there again. Yeah. So I want to hit one. One is sleep. We talked about that. Exercise. We talked about that. Deep breathing. We talked about that. Fine-tuning your relationships, looking at areas of it that need to be fixed or addressed, and also acceptance of some discomfort in our daily lives.
That last one.
Acceptance, because sometimes we are anxious because we want to be in control. We want to predict the future. We want to guide how things go. We want to direct. We want to, sometimes just release and letting things go, and observing and allowing it. And that's acceptance in life of situations that we don't have power to change. But I also want to talk about acceptance sometimes of the discomfort of anxiety. Like when your body is warning you that things are not great, or something is, cause for alarm, or attacking your survival, or not in service of you, instead of avoiding, to sit with discomfort, knowing that it passes. And that
Mm,
allows
mm,
us to be able to stop, assess the situation, and adapt where we need to adapt, make changes where we need to change. But first, we need to have a sense of acceptance, and not, obsessing with control. I find that with anxiety a lot comes a desire for control of everything, which is impossible for a human.
mm, mm. It's so interesting. An example, you know how kids can mess up the house, with your house clean all the time. I'm asking for a friend. Asking
Yes,
for a friend.
and
And then when you really think about it, that a child is supposed to be messy, and if a child is not playing and being a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, then something is wrong with that child.
yeah,
Sometimes
yeah,
it helps put things in perspective that that's normal, that's
right,
okay, what they're
right.
doing.
Let
And I
it
had to learn
go.
this. You gotta let it go. There's some things that are really out of our control, and when we know that, we relieve ourselves of the pressure. And I like something. One thing you said, a very very powerful. You said, your body is trying to say something when you feel a little anxious, when you feel those alarms going off. Sit in it. When we try to ignore it, it then builds up. When we try to ignore it, but we should sit in it. What is your body trying to tell you? What is going on that you need to address, that you've shoved away? And is it sleep that you haven't given your body? And your body is like, is it the
Need
fact
it.
that you have to
Hmm.
exercise? Is it there if you're in a stressful relationship and you need to have that difficult conversation or get help?
Hmm.
Both
Hmm.
of you, you
Hmm.
know. God, this is deep. I'm taking notes, so I really appreciate you. Now, you talked about this earlier, but I want us to talk about it one more time.
Okay.
One of the things that patients have said and over again, doc, at nighttime my mind will not shut up, because you're left, with the day to day, you're able to be distracted by chores or whatever else you have to do, but at nighttime
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
left to your mind, and sleep
Hmm.
seems evasive. Doc, help us. What would you say to that patient who's listening?
And as part of anxiety, the arousal, these hyperarousal can be part of some of the anxiety disorders, right? And so it's not surprising that the mind will not wind down, because sometimes it's replaying what happened. It's now
Mm,
trying to solve a problem. It's trying to say, so what are we going to do about this, or how are we going to preempt, this thing tomorrow? How are we going to have that conversation tomorrow? The mind will not shut
mm,
down. We've talked about some simple things that we can do, like guided relaxation, meditative breathing, things like that, to see if you can encourage your mind to shut down. If those things don't work, we may use medications like beta blockers, alpha agonists, to kind of help shut it down. You know how sometimes your computer is overeating and you don't have to do the hard shutdown.
right.
Sometimes that's what we have to do, if we're trying everything, and our efforts are not working well. We can do a hard shutdown for our system in the beginning to help us to shut down. So, beta blockers, propranolols, prazosin in PTSD patients, like, that entire
Mm,
arousal is addressed by medications that help us override this hyperarousal systems
right.
in the beginning. And over time, once our body settles down, our mind settles down, we will learn to sleep again. We'll learn to set structure and routine to encourage good sleep. And over time, many people are able to return to sleeping on their own once the hyperarousal has been really quieted down. So sometimes we need, a little medication, medicinal help to override the systems, to get it done, so that then our body can be trained again to be calm
Calm.
and go to sleep. And we'll talk about hypnotics. Those are very popular. But I would say those are medications of last resort. So hypnotic sedatives or medicines like Ambiens, the Sonatas, the Lunestas, the GABA medicines, they work also to quiet down our arousal systems, and they can be used. But in the psychiatry world, we tend to see a lot more of the people who run into problems with these medicines. So we tend to reach for them as last resort if we need to, again, to override the system,
Right.
quiet down GABA systems, do some inhibition to allow the body to quiet down, allowing itself to reboot again.
Mm.
So,
So definitely make have an appointment, make an appointment with your doctor so you can come up with an individualized plan that works for you. I would also suggest brain dumping too. I find that maybe an hour or so before, write out those thoughts, like almost like just dump them. Sometimes that could be helpful too. But essentially, what we're saying here is a good quality of life is still very much possible, even if there's a diagnosis of anxiety. Um,
absolutely.
Sometimes it comes up as excessive worrying. I know sometimes we don't like to label things. It doesn't matter what the name is called, but you can have a good quality of life, even with these diagnoses or these issues, because there are things that can be done to help improve your quality of life and to minimize those overactive alarm systems. This was very good, Doc. Thank you. I hope those who are watching find this very useful. Please share this with those who could find this useful. Um, Caring is sharing, and the world could use a lot more care in the times we're in.
Absolutely.
Now, for
Absolutely.
those who are watching, who are like, Doc, and thank you all who are watching. I can't see all your faces, but Doc, where can we find you? People are wondering, where can I have this access to this doctor? Where can I have her come as a speaker or come discuss with my audience? Where can people find you, Doc?
Okay, so I can be found. Well, first, I'm a psychiatrist, so you can find me in my office in Cranford in New Jersey, Bright Minds MD. Yay! And we also serve, so we're a Cranford, New Jersey based office. We offer telehealth practices right now to multiple states, New Jersey and New York. And we're also covering a little bit, one of our, well, not just me, but our team members, we also cover Minnesota and Texas right now, actually a little bit. On social media, I can be found. So brightmindsmd.com is our practice website, and at brightmindsmd is our link on Instagram. And personally, also I'm at Dr. _ Bolanle. That's again at Dr. _ Bolanle on Instagram. Those are my social media links right now.
Awesome. And what we're going to do is at the end of this live, we're going to have that information in the comments so people um, can can connect with you later. But thank you so much for having us, for coming actually this morning on a Saturday morning. I appreciate you. Thanks for
Thank
taking
you.
the time. I know this has been very helpful. God bless you, sis. Thanks. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Tolu.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for watching. And if you or anyone you know is looking for an awesome, a thorough, a passionate family physician who helps patients live long and well, I am she. Have a good one, man.
Yay.
Ladies.
Thank you.